Okay, let's jump right into this because today we are diving into a truth that's been hiding in plain sight. Every monster you can imagine from the age of the dinosaurs, the T-Rex, the raptors, literally the biggest killers that ever walked the earth, well, they were all quietly heading towards the exact same ending. And no, that ending isn't a dusty museum exhibition. It's actually sitting right now in a bucket of fried chicken. Seriously, they didn't go extinct at all.
I mean, it's a completely wild premise to start with, right? Think about the dinosaurs you would have bet your life savings on to run this planet forever. You're probably picturing a 50-foot T-Rex with a bite that could crush a car, or maybe those massively armored three-horned giants. But none of them made it. So how on earth did the terrifying razor-clawed predators of the ancient world end up as a shrunk-down animal you can grab at the grocery store for $4 a pound? Listen to this, because it's absolutely crucial. Scientists aren't just saying a chicken is some distant cousin of a dinosaur. They aren't saying it just shares a few random traits or evolved from one a really long time ago. As crazy as it sounds, they state unequivocally that it is an actual dinosaur, in the exact same way a T-Rex was one. It is the exact same family line, no separation. And the most fascinating part? They didn't just barely survive. They are the absolute, undisputed winners of evolution. Let this number sink in for a second. 27 billion. There are 27 billion of them alive right now. That makes them more populous than any other bird on the entire planet, all put together. The scariest hunter that ever lived is, right at this very moment, the most common animal on Earth.
And you can actually find anatomical proof of this hiding right inside your kitchen. We all know that classic Thanksgiving tradition, right? Two people grab that little V-shaped wishbone, pull, and make a wish. Well, biologically speaking, that exact bone was originally a highly effective spring in a raptor. It literally loaded up and snapped forward every single time the animal lunged out to grab and kill its prey. So every year, families are holding hands and cheerfully wrestling over a predator's killing spring.
You can even check this out yourself. Seriously, next time you're prepping a whole chicken, take a look at the foot, count the little bones in each toe, and then compare that directly to a velociraptor foot. You're going to find the exact same number of bones and the exact same layout, toe for toe. It is fundamentally the exact same foot. It's like somebody just shrank a raptor down and dropped it in a deep fryer. But to find the real smoking gun, you have to look beyond the fully grown bird. You have to look deep inside the egg. You see, partway through its development, the chicken embryo actually builds the long, spread-out, three-bone foot of a raptor first. It lays out the exact same structure its ancient ancestors had. Then, right at the very end, just before hatching, it fuses part of it shut and tucks it away. The chicken literally builds a tiny dinosaur foot first and then perfectly hides its genetic receipts right before it hatches, looking totally harmless.
So the big takeaway here is that a chicken skeleton is built using what we can basically call evolution's mute button. The DNA blueprint for a dinosaur isn't some clean, newly written recipe. It's more like a giant stack of every older body that family ever wore. The old instructions for dinosaur parts are still sitting right there inside the bird's DNA, completely written out from start to finish. They're just quietly switched off, turned down to zero.
And we know for an absolute fact this old DNA isn't gone, because sometimes these ancient switches randomly flip back on all by themselves. We've actually seen dolphins pulled out of the ocean, naturally growing tiny back legs and hips, parts their ancestors ditched millions of years ago. We've seen humans born with actual working muscular tails. These aren't just random, meaningless defects. They are the uninvited past waking up. And in that same exact way, chickens still hold the full, uncut instructions for growing teeth.
Now, if these ancient traits can wake up by a total freak accident of nature, it begs a question that is honestly a little terrifying. What happens the day a scientist stops waiting for an accident and starts flipping those switches back on themselves, like on purpose?
Well, we actually found out exactly what happens. Picture this. A grad student is looking into the mouth of a mutant chicken embryo from a genetic line that labs had essentially ignored for 50 years. Literally everyone else had just been studying this mutant bird's weird legs. But when this student finally decided to look inside the mouth, he discovered it had naturally grown sharp, curved, cone-shaped teeth, the exact same kind a baby alligator grows. A chicken hasn't grown a tooth in over 70 million years, but the instructions were still right there, just waiting.
And scientists didn't just stop at the teeth. A team out of Yale and Harvard actually went after the face itself. They figured out the specific chemical signals that tell a bird's face to fuse two bones together to make a beak. So in a lab, they successfully turned down those two signals in a chicken egg. They didn't add any outside Frankenstein DNA, they just turned those two natural signals down. And guess what? Instead of a beak, the embryo grew a two-boned dinosaur snout that matched a raptor perfectly.
Which brings us to a really stunning realization, and it honestly completely rewrites pop culture. Jurassic Park totally lied to a whole generation. Think about it. They told us the only way to get a dinosaur back was to find ancient mosquitoes trapped in amber and patch the genetic gaps with frog DNA. But the real secret to bringing back dinosaurs isn't finding ancient blood at all. It's simply unlocking the active DNA that is already humming along inside living birds today. This exact realization is actually what inspired the famous paleontologist Jack Horner, who, by the way, actually worked as a consultant on the Jurassic Park movies, to start a real-world project with the kinda goofy name, the Tyrannosaurus. His goal? Literally to build a dinosaur out of a chicken by turning these traits back on one by one. But while he has solid leads on how to bring back the snout, the teeth, and those tiny wing claws, he keeps slamming headfirst into a massive biological wall.
The brutal truth of the Tyrannosaurus project is this smashed DNA wall. See, while some dinosaur DNA, like the snout and the tooth shape, is just quieted down and can be turned back up, other parts were completely smashed apart. To get a real dinosaur tail, you'd need the chicken to grow a run of extra bones it stopped making ages ago. And while you can grow the shape of a tooth, the recipe for the hard white enamel coating is just completely broken in all living birds. Evolution overwrote those files millions of years ago, and there is simply no undo button for that.
Now, if genetic lab experiments on tiny embryos aren't enough to convince you that the chicken is a dinosaur, let's look at the ultimate, undeniable fossil proof. Back in 2003, a scientist named Mary Schweitzer cracked open a massive, 68-million-year-old T-Rex leg bone. And instead of just solid rock, she found squishy, stretchy, see-through soft tissue and blood vessels still inside. The current best guess is that iron from the dinosaur's own blood essentially pickled and perfectly preserved it from the inside out over millions of years.
So her team did the unthinkable. They actually extracted protein from that ancient 68-million-year-old T-Rex goo and ran it through a machine to test its building blocks. They compared it to literally every animal alive today. And the closest match? It was the chicken and the ostrich. They sat right at the very top, beating out all the lizards, beating out the mammals, and finally confirming what 150 years of bone studies had already suggested.
Of course, in science, there are always debates, right? Skeptics argue that pulling protein that old is literally impossible, and that modern chicken protein from the lab must have simply leaked into the sample and faked the result. But think about the incredible irony of that argument for just a second. If modern chicken protein really did sneak in, it matched the T-Rex profile so perfectly that it completely fooled the machines. So honestly, whether that goo is 68 million years old or came from a chicken sandwich that morning, it tells the exact same truth. The biology reads the exact same way.
And this fundamentally shatters everything we thought we knew about that famous asteroid impact that ended the age of the dinosaurs. There were three great families sharing the planet back then. The giant longnecks, total dead end. The horned and armored giants like the Triceratops, another total dead end. All of the biggest, meanest animals were just wiped off the map. Only one small, feathered branch of the theropods, the two-legged hunters, actually managed to survive the fire.
The ultimate evolutionary irony here is that if you had to place a bet on who would survive the literal apocalypse, you'd probably pick the biggest, most heavily armored monsters in the swamp, right? But being the obvious winner was actually the worst possible spot to be in. The true winner survived by being small enough to hide, staying warm under a coat of feathers, and just eating seeds on the ground while the rest of the world burned.
And so this specific bloodline has survived for over 66 million years since the asteroid hit. They didn't just vanish into museums behind glass displays, they merely shrank down, multiplied by the billions, and quietly took over, becoming the single most common animal on Earth today.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with this one provocative thought. The dinosaurs didn't go extinct. They are just quietly waiting in your fridge. You don't need a time machine to see the deadliest family that ever walked the Earth because you are literally eating them for dinner every single day. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive, and seriously, the next time you look at a bucket of fried chicken, remember exactly what you're holding.